View from the Gutters, episode 15. Welcome to View from the Gutters, the comic book podcast where each episode we discuss a collected edition, trade paperback, or graphic novel, and then recommend and vote on the book for the next episode. Warning: the discussion portion of this show has massive spoilers for that book. On this episode, we discuss Cosmic Odyssey, and to skip ahead to the recommendation section, skip ahead to 3912. Alright, welcome to View from the Gutters, episode 15.
Yep.
I'm Andrew Chard.
I'm Joe Preti.
Cade, Reynolds.
I'm Tobiah Panshin.
And I'm Matt McGinnis.
And we are the Mod Squad.
Oh, no, we're in View from the Gutters. I already did that part.
I was going to say that we were a five-some because I was listening to episode 10 just earlier today when I said that the first time we were a five-some.
Yeah.
We are five-some.
We're another five-some.
A fearsome five-some.
Yeah.
We are the Fearsome Five, maybe? We're in the Spider-Man villains?
No,
The
that's
Sinister Six.
That's the Sinister Six. The Fearsome Five.
We're somewhere between the Fantastic Four and the Sinister
Sinister
Six.
Six. It's a
But
good
like,
place.
that's
to
what
be.
I was gonna say, that's the
place I want to be.
Which means there's a very good chance that the Invisible Woman is going to have sex with one of us because that's what she does.
That's not going to
There's
happen.
no chance of that.
0%.
How did we get to that?
That's what she did for a long time, didn't she?
Well, guys, I'm having sex with her right now. You just can't see her. How does that work?
Exactly like you said.
That sounds terrible.
That's
All right.
I was impugning the moral character of Sue Richards, is what I was doing.
She's a bad character.
No, because it seems like she's somewhat, her husband's kind of an asshole. So.
Why you got to be slut shaming
Yeah.
Joe?
I'm
Don't be
honestly
slut-shaming.
not. I apologize to
She's just not a
Miss
very good.
Richards.
She's just not a very good character. That's
Well,
fine.
it's...
She just has a weakness for scaly green trunks.
And who doesn't?
I
tell you something.
definitely
I got a
do.
little, I'm telling you.
I'm
Marvel
more about the
swimsuit.
washboard abs, really.
Yeah, Namor's not hiding.
Marvel
Anything in
swimsuit.
that
Marvel
suit.
used to do swimsuit editions. Do you remember this?
No.
Remember
Was
Marvel
I-
used
No,
to
I know what you're talking about.
gratuitous. It was gratuitous T, A, and A. I guess tits, ass, and abs, because there were men characters, and one of the
So
more famous
good.
one is Namor standing there, and he's basically just wearing like a G-string. He's from the front. It was Jay Lee, I think, that drew him.
Damn.
And
That's how
You
From
are
the back.
surprisingly specifically knowledgeable about this.
it's because I've seen it recently. I saw it recently.
Every
somewhere.
day
On
'cause
your
it's
bathroom
hanging on
wall.
your
It's my wallpaper on my computer. All right.
All right, so what are we talking about?
We are talking about Cosmic Odyssey.
Cosmodyssey.
Yeah, so I picked it. I like it. What do you got? What do you think, Joe?
I liked. Well, I mean, I want to say that I liked it, but you picked it, and I don't want to give you any more credit.
Yeah, that's fair.
So
So I'll not listen for this part, and you
No,
can say whatever
actually,
you want.
I liked it. We were actually having a brief conversation before we started recording about DC. One of the big problems that the New 52 is facing is DC has some very decent writers, very good writers, and they're having a hard time matching writers to books. And I think Cosmic Odyssey is a great example of the right writer for the right story. Jim Starlin nails this.
Yeah,
he
and
just nails it.
Right artists too.
Oh,
because
God, yes.
Mignola, kind of cops some Jack Kirby really well.
He
you know?
does.
Yeah,
he does.
And
I
he
gotta
knocks it
say,
out of the park.
I gotta say his Dark Side is probably my favorite.
Oh yeah,
so good.
yeah. But there's moments too with Superman where it's just him and Shadow, and you just see his eyes because he's getting ready to
And
do
the
the zap
red
thing.
ass.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
mean,
It's all the silhouettes.
Yeah.
He does it with Superman. He does it with Batman incredibly well.
Yeah,
It's very iconic. There's a lot of iconic images in
Yeah.
this book.
I love the way that he just draws Darkseid like a giant turd.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
no,
so
it is.
huge.
It's awesome.
He really
That's
does
how
look
I've
like a
always felt
giant
about
stone turd.
yeah, it's really how I felt about Darkseid. But this is like a salve for my tortured comic book soul. This is what's great about comic books. It's a great
Yeah.
story. It's very entrenched in that comic book mythology, and unapologetically so. And it's a lot of fun to read.
It also sheds light on, I think, a part of the DC universe that is heavily underused.
The fourth world.
And at that point, very underused because
Absolutely.
I think they were not really in continuity around this time. Like they
Yeah.
had been kind of overlooked.
Well,
and,
Kirby was doing that stuff in the 70s,
right?
right?
Yeah.
And this is
88.
so very close after Crisis, and it
Right.
was like not really determined like whether they were still around or not. I think, and so this book was able to kind of bring them back into the foreground and also get around a lot of continuity issues. If you know anything about the Fourth World, they kind of like retell the origin of it at some point in this and describe how it's like in some kind of pocket universe.
Yeah,
and therefore,
with
like,
the boom tube.
the only
You
way you can get
need
to
a
it is
mother
through
box.
boom tubes. So they're kind of, instead of being in another dimension the way it used to be in pre-crisis, it's now kind of in another dimension, but in a post-crisis world. So they
kind of their own pocket universe.
yeah.
I thought it was done pretty smartly the way they
absolutely.
they folded it into the current continuity.
Yeah. And if you weren't really paying attention or a huge Fourth World fan, like that part didn't feel awkward in the way that a lot of continuity fixes
No, it
do.
really doesn't. And it actually, going back to what Joe said, does contrast very well with the new 52 that's going on right now, because this is an example of them taking previous mythology that wasn't quite working out with the rest of their universe and turn it into something that feels seamless and organic and a part of what the DC universe eventually became in the modern age.
Yeah.
And with the new 52, it doesn't feel like they've done that at all.
Right.
And that really is a testament to Sterling's writing. I mean,
I mean,
just beyond.
What is this? 25 years later, it's still
it's
still crisp. You know, I think one of the things I really enjoyed about it is that he's. I totally lost that thought. So,
what did you think, Cade?
Cade, what did you think?
I loved it. I consider it a great classic of. I loved it. I consider it a great classic of the DC universe. I believe that it stands on its own regardless of any other stories happening at the same time. You don't have to read anything before you jump into Cosmic Odyssey. You just have to know who Batman and Superman are.
Yeah. It's a really good introduction to the Fourth World characters, I think.
Absolutely.
And it's the thing I love the most about it is that it's good because it's written well. It doesn't try any tricks. It strikes this really nice balance, I think, between modern writing, which became a little bit darker after, you had Alan Moore and you had Frank Miller, and I think comic book writing got a lot darker. You see that in Legends of the Dark Knight when we talked about it in our Venom podcast. But it strikes this really nice balance between that and the writing in Crisis, which is a little kind of stagey, villains giving soliloquies and heroes being very heroic.
It's dated.
It is very dated. And I mean, I love Crisis. Don't get me
too.
wrong. I think it's a great read. And I think that it's an essential read if you want to understand the DC universe. But
I'm laughing because when Matt started working at the comic book store we were talking about DC, and I handed him a giant stack of books to read. I was like, oh, this will basically tell you.
Let me preface that with, I literally picked up 52 and went, this is a cool concept. Hey, Chard, is there anything I should read before reading 52? He started at Crisis on Infinite Earths, and gave me about 12 other books.
That's where you got to start.
Leading up to 52.
It sets the tone, I think, for the DC universe.
I had never been more pissed
age.
when I read 52 and realized I could have just picked up 52.
What? No.
And it would have been just fine.
I got into DC Comics really at the same time as you, because I didn't read them growing up, really. I mean, I knew who Batman was, obviously. But I watched the Justice League cartoon.
Which was brilliant.
Which really ended, right about the time that 52 was happening. And I was like, oh, there's a big event happening. Infinite Crisis. This sounds cool. I'll read this. Oh, it leads into this thing called 52. Well, maybe I'll buy that. And that was the first DC thing that I ever bought, was 52. And it was great. And I feel like between the two of those, I really got to learn about the DC universe as it was happening, rather than going back and saying, what are all these old stories that I need to read?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think it works multiple ways. I think there's part of me that is super OCD and wants to start at the beginning. And I think you do get a lot more out of comics when you know the most you can about the characters from before, but it doesn't mean that they're keeping new readers.
There are some stories that are like that and some that aren't. I think that Cosmic Odyssey is not a story like that.
I would agree.
Whereas something like Kingdom Come definitely is.
Oh,
the more you know about the DC Comics universe,
harder.
the better Kingdom Come is.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say, reading Crisis on Infinite Earths, one thing that I do appreciate about reading it is, I mean, when Watchmen the movie came out, obviously, people were like, "Whoa, comics! You know, The Watchmen. This is the greatest comic ever." You go back and you read it, and I mean, it's good. Do not get me wrong. I loved it, but at the same time, you're wondering why do all these people keep talking? You know, all these people who've read comics for years always talk about The Watchmen.
Yeah.
They say it's a benchmark of comics.
Yeah,
It's
very
like-
difficult.
It's an artifact of its time.
Exactly, and the same thing with The Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah.
I mean, you read those books and they're good, but if you haven't, I mean, if you didn't grow up with them, if you weren't reading them when they came out, it's hard to really put them in, you know, put them in perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you read, then I read Crisis on Infinite Earths, realizing that those other two books were coming out almost exactly at the same time, you know, within the same year. And all of a sudden, it hits you why those books are so iconic.
They feel
because they're so different.
Well, they had risen up against
well,
the heroes of the Silver Age and fucking stabbed them to death.
Yeah,
I mean,
brutal.
You're talking about Adam West Batman.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, and then The Dark Knight Returns with no transition.
It's a smack in the. It's a punch in the face. It really is that
It feels
level.
so modern.
Yeah.
And that's because they were written so far ahead of their
And
time.
because everything else since then has been very heavily influenced.
Oh,
by
yeah,
it.
of course.
Exactly. You can feel the fingerprints of those two books on almost every superhero
Yeah.
book.
Oh, absolutely.
You pick up now.
Absolutely. Too much, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I mean,
Yes.
basically, like when you think of the hyper-violent comics of the '80s, you're talking about the second half of the '80s, and B, you're talking about people reading Watchmen and The Dark Knight Returns and fundamentally misunderstanding what makes them interesting or compelling, and going,
absolutely.
"Oh my God, Batman has a machine gun, whatever that big gun that he uses to kill the mutants." At one point in the comic.
He doesn't. It's a pacification device. He's not killing
Yeah,
anybody.
it's like with rubber bullets.
Yeah,
he has,
right.
Well, he has the tank sort of thing.
Yes,
and,
But the point is that people look at that and go, "Oh my God, giant tanks and violence, and that's so cool. Let's do that." And just completely missed what was really interesting about the stories.
Yeah, I mean, this was about the death of the Silver Age superhero. Well, Alan Moore would tell you it was about the death of the superhero, but as Alan Moore found out, you can't do that. Not even Alan Moore. I think this may be what has driven Alan Moore off the deep end, and that's why he's like now a 10th level necromancer. But this was about where Watchmen and Dark Knight succeeded is that it killed the Silver Age, and Crisis did too. Yeah. And that's why for me, Crisis is a gateway into Ron Mars's Green Lantern and William Mesner Loeb's and Mark Waid's Flash and all these really incredible characters that grew out of the ashes.
It definitely paved the way. I mean,
Cosmic Odyssey.
Yeah,
Cosmic Odyssey.
Sure.
I think
Absolutely.
Cosmic Odyssey coming out 2 years after Crisis on Infinite Earths, there's still elements of the Silver Age there. You know, Batman has his yellow bat logo on his chest. So like you can still kind of see the remnants of the Silver Age there, but it feels very, very modern in so many ways. Because it was creating the modern comic universe.
And it does the exact opposite. It has the exact opposite effect, at least to me, as things like Watchmen, where Watchmen was killing the superhero. This is breathing life into it. This is giving it that kind of spark.
It's the Alan Moore killed superheroes, and Jim Starlin birthed them from the ashes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's interesting too because one thing I noticed in this book, unlike the Silver Age used a lot of, I guess it's not in contrast to the Silver Age, but with kind of the ideas of the Silver Age is there's a lot of scientific ideas really heavily presented in here. It's a very science fiction oriented universe. It's the alien worlds and scientific devices and doomsday and all this very scientific heaviness. But in the end, the villains and the way they defeat the villains is a very magic, supernatural kind of effect.
Yes.
And so it kind of blends these two eras of the Silver Age.
And one of my favorite scenes in the entire book. I was really kind of
Which was it? Go ahead. I think
it
we
was
can dig in.
at the end where you find out who Batman called.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
I felt incredibly pleased with myself because I called that.
Did you?
Way
I
early.
thought it could have been
not right away, but pretty quickly. I was like, who could Batman have possibly called?
I was in the right section of the DC universe, but I got it wrong.
I think I said last time we recorded that Dr. Fate was in there, forgetting that that's like a big reveal in the book. I was like, Dr. Fate's in,
Oh my god, you just ruined it.
and I did, I ruined it for everyone.
Spoiler
And then
alert, by the way.
I didn't, and like not knowing that that was the big reveal, and I forgot. And then when I read it, I was like, damn it, I said that on the air.
No, I completely forgot that. So
Well, that's good.
Yeah,
Well,
no,
they
I
didn't
totally
say-
had as
yeah.
well. I totally had as well.
I didn't say what he was doing, and I was just listing a shit ton of characters, so I feel like I didn't give too much away. But yeah, no, when Dr. Fate shows up and there's all this, cosmic magic going on of like, tethering people between worlds and pulling them out of void space.
it is
and
very
whatnot.
Kirby-esque.
Yeah,
It is
awesome.
super Kirby-esque.
And that's one of the things that I loved about it, kind of like what Joe said earlier, is it's a comic book. Like, it's
Yeah.
unabashedly
Yes!
comics.
And-
And it's not apologetic about it.
Yeah.
But it also doesn't overdo it. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
it's a very
No.
balanced
It's
book.
not
There's
campy
no
or
melodrama.
anything.
Yeah.
As we have previously discussed, Superman punches a giant robot.
Oh,
Superman
yeah.
punches a giant robot, but also, this is maybe the first time in recent memory where Batman punched somebody, and I was like, fuck yeah, Batman!
Yeah.
I'm like,
Because it was
seriously.
the beginning of that, like
Yeah, like,
the one punch kind of.
I mean, the because there's there's the infamous Batman punches Guy Gardner.
Yeah, the one punch.
Because he
one
deserves it.
punch
He
in
deserves it. Let's not, Guy Gardner's a dick.
Justice
Right?
League International.
Yeah.
That's his character.
And then in Rebirth, Hal totally socks Batman, and Batman deserves it because he made a dick. And but this was the first time in a
good.
while where I was like, yeah, right on, Batman,
And it
right
was
on.
cool to see Batman show emotion that wasn't
Absolutely.
insanity. Like, I don't
Yeah.
think that's an emotion really.
Or
but,
anger
like,
towards people that he cares about.
like.
It actually ties into what I wanted to say. If I can back up just a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
So I really liked all of the individual elements of this book. Superman is amazingly well written. Batman is amazingly well written. Like, there are so many incredible individual character moments, but when you actually add them up and put them together into an entire story, I didn't like it. Which is weird, because I like all the individual pieces, but not the whole thing. Because at the end of the day, it was an event book.
Yeah.
The
Right.
story was had a certain feeling of meaninglessness to it, because it was just kind of like, there's a big evil thing and it's trying to destroy the universe, and we got to go punch it. And there were a lot of characters that didn't really get any sort of development,
Right.
and didn't really contribute much to the story. Starfire.
I was hoping she
Martian
would do
Manhunter.
more. And,
Yeah.
So the characters that got really great moments, those were incredibly great moments.
Yeah.
Batman is funny in this book.
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He's great.
And he's an interesting character, and he's not just kind of like, I'm grim and I'm Batman.
Yeah,
he
goes
really does have a
through-
character to him.
Yeah, and
Other
art,
characters
too.
who don't get any characterization are kind of flat, and it's like,
Lightweight.
why are they here?
Adam Strange. There's a lot of like.
But
tactical
I
There's a
actually,
lot of dead
I think John Jones has one of my favorite moments in the book.
Yeah, when he's just berating.
No,
John
it's
Stewart.
at the
That
end
is
of
a
the whole
good
thing.
moment.
I like that a lot. At the
And
end,
also,
when he-
this is, I mean, we haven't even touched on that. This is like a huge, for anybody that's a Green Lantern fan, the
Yeah.
Zanshi.
Yeah,
haunts John Stewart
this is
for
the destruction
years.
of Zanshi.
Yeah.
Now, did that actually influence him for years, or was that something that they brought up much later?
No,
in
because
recent Green
he's
Lantern
he's
comics?
still dealing with it when Hal comes back and is basically, I'm going to be Green Lantern again, and John is like on Mosaic World,
Yeah.
and he can't even deal with it.
Yeah.
He's dealing with the rogue, the guy that ends up being the rogue Guardian, and then that whole crap happens, and he's still, and actually fatality comes out of that whole thing.
No, I guess
Yeah.
I just
She
haven't
comes
read
back-
that whole period of Green
Yeah, I
Lantern.
mean, Ron Marr's run on Kyle's it's the Kyle Rayner. It's from 50 on, or 51 on. It's fucking brilliant. Actually, he may have done Emerald Twilight too. I'm not sure, but it's great. And the Zanshi thing has pretty far-reaching consequences, at least for Green Lantern in the modern age.
As does the anti-life equation, which Grant Morrison grabs for Final Crisis. That's what he.
Which
that's
I
what,
don't want to.
That's what Darkseid uses to like enslave everybody
Well,
in
the
Final Crisis.
anti-life equation goes back to the original Fourth World.
Right. And
Right.
so, like, but in this book, Darkseid gets a piece of it at the end.
Right.
He keeps it. And, like, that doesn't come up again, I don't think, until Final Crisis.
Yeah,
so, like, that's
I
kind of
wouldn't
crazy.
doubt it. If anybody was going to dredge up
Yeah.
this tiny little morsel of information and be like, bam, that's my story right there,
Yeah.
it'd be Grant Morrison.
Yeah. So, yeah, the anti-life equation, being brought into the modern age in this book is pretty interesting, too.
Well,
I do think that John Jones has some really solid moments.
He does have some. I probably
But
should
I agree, like,
have
Star-
mentioned him in the same breath as
Yeah.
Starfire, who does contribute to the story, but
yeah.
doesn't really have any character moments.
Yeah.
No, she's
In fact, the whole Starfire Light Ray team, I feel
Yeah,
like you could have
and
done away with
Adam
them.
Strange.
Right.
Like,
I did love the whole thing with Batman. Basically, he gets back. They're tasked to all do their individual things on the different planets. Batman gets to Earth, and he's like, "I'm not going to do anything. I'm
Yeah.
going to sit back. I'm going to watch events. I'm going to plan because I'm Batman."
Because I'm
Right.
Batman, that's what I do, right?
And
Well,
they
he's
don't.
being a detective for the first time in years.
Right, which is
Yeah.
something that they don't do nearly enough in modern Batman comics because they've got the whole Bat God thing where it's like by the time you have launched your evil scheme, I've already planned 6 different ways for me to defeat you.
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I'm the Bat God.
There's-
He doesn't do that. He's like, I'm going to do some detecting. I'm going to sit back. I'm going to wait. I'm going to get some information. I'm going to talk to some people.
Yeah.
I'm going to see what's going on.
I've got
When
one of the most powerful weapons in the universe. What? This? A computer? Yeah, a computer and all its databases. And you're
Yeah.
kind of like, yeah, that's Batman, motherfucker.
yeah, I mean, it's
That's what
the
Batman
the
does.
detective rules, like when in doubt, follow somebody kind
Yeah.
of thing, where he's just like, I don't know what I'm doing. Let's just
Or what is
see
it?
what happens.
Robert B. Parker Spencer always says he'll be solving whatever mystery is, and he'll be like, if you can't figure out what to do next, just pull on a thread and see what
Yeah.
unravels, you
Yeah.
know? And I feel that's the essence of the detective. And I feel like when Batman's doing that, Dave Lapham wrote a Batman's storyline called City of Crime, and it's great because it's Batman like tracing this thing that's killing people and he can't figure out what it is, and he keeps being a step behind it, and it's compelling because he's not used to that.
He has
Yeah.
to think it.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think I've said this before on this podcast, but Detective Batman is my absolute favorite Batman. I'm all about Batman being awesome and kicking the shit out of 18 people at once, but I love Batman because he is a detective. You know, he's the man among gods.
Well, there's really 3 Batmans.
Batman.
We've decided that
There's the
flow is
Cape
Batman.
Crusader,
Yes.
the superhero.
Yeah.
There's the Dark Knight, Christopher Nolan, dark, psychological, creepy
Frank
villain,
Miller,
And
to
there's
some
horror, and then there's the world's greatest detective, who
Yeah.
doesn't get nearly enough play in the modern age.
Absolutely.
My favorite too. It's nice to see him not winning all the time, or
Yeah, it
not
is.
winning easily.
And going back to our
earning it.
podcast, I mean, that's one of the things that made Venom so
Absolutely.
great
Yeah.
is because he doesn't win, and because that brings him down to our level, that makes him,
And
like,
it's-
It
It's
humanizes
identifiable.
it, yeah. And it's
Thank you.
also he's not Mr. Terrific. He's not like crazy genius. He's just like he is really smart,
Yeah.
but he also like isn't.
Well, but like Batman's whole thing for me is sheer force of will, and I know
Yeah.
will is usually something that's talked about in reference to Green Lanterns, but this is a man that trained himself to be able to throw down with the next to Superman and Wonder Woman.
I think Batman's biggest strength is he's the world's greatest generalist.
Yeah.
He knows how to do. He knows a little bit about everything.
He
He's
is
not the best in any of the any one thing.
He's a jack of all
But-
trades,
right.
master of none.
If any situation crops up, you know that Batman's going to go, oh, I know how to deal with this. I know somebody to talk to,
Yeah.
or I can figure something out. I can use my computer. I can do some detecting.
I like
He has that
World's greatest researcher.
breadth of skill.
it's great, and Judd Winnick does a really good job of it in Under the Red Hood when he fights the Amazo, right? Is that what that robot's called?
Yeah.
And he and Nightwing
Yeah.
take down an Amazo, which has like the speed of the Flash and the power
Well,
of Superman.
the Amazo robot was made to duplicate the powers of the Justice League.
Right, and he basically takes it
And
down.
that's-
2 dudes take it down.
That's one of my favorite Amazo takedowns. Then the other one is Wally West ends up running into one. I think it might be the Nail, which is an Elseworld story, but he basically is like sees him and then just vibrates his brain out of him. It's just like it just goes through him. When it comes out on the other side, he's holding his electric like android brain, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
The one major flaw with this story that I can't accept. Why are there countdown timers on all the bombs?
Yeah,
That makes no
yeah,
sense.
it's very comic book in that regard. My favorite part too is when Batman, the timer that Batman is, and what is his Forager
yeah.
are. I was like Scavenger. Nope, Forager are trying to shut down. It gets to 0, and then when the dude fixes it, it goes back to 30. It's like what? Why does that happen?
That would
I
make
can
an awesome cartoon.
because of James Bond.
Yeah.
It's so ridiculous. And if they just pushed the button to begin with, it would not have been a problem.
Yeah.
Like they would have won easily.
I think people have been asking why villains don't do things the right way for a long time, and I mean, really, they were Cobra Commandering it, right?
Yeah.
It was they couldn't win.
They were monologuing.
They were yes.
I mean, essentially.
Soliloquizing. Is
Yeah,
even
that
a
one.
word?
Yeah,
Did
sure.
we just create a new word?
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, I have a few problems with the writing, but you know what? It's all made up for because of Mike Mignola's art,
Yeah.
which is incredible. His
It
use
is.
of light and shadow, the way that he draws Superman like this big freaking gorilla.
Yeah.
Like it. I mean, he draws Superman almost like Hellboy in a way, which is really
Absolutely.
cool. Like
Yeah.
you don't see Superman drawn like this big, beefy guy anymore.
It reminds me of the way that Tim Sale draws Superman, where he's just like a huge chunk of a dude. Like he's just
a man.
he's a truck. You know, you
Yeah.
understand why he can punch giant
7
robots.
foot tall Iowa farm boy lifts up trucks.
Yeah, yeah. He looks like he can punch a robot really hard.
Yeah,
And,
just the way that Mignola draws all of the different characters made me love this comic more than the writing ever could.
I have to say it's Mignola.
Didn't I say Mignola?
No, it's Mignola.
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 I don't know. How to
right.
I'm not going to pretend I know how to pronounce it.
No,
I
it
say
is
wrong
because
every time.
as
If
I'm an Italian and I'm used to people mispronouncing my last name, which is ridiculous because it's very simple. But so when I first saw it, I was like, oh, it's Mignola. But then people kept saying Mignola. But then Gabby totally chided me the other day.
Yeah.
And she said that she was at Emerald City and she was getting Hellboy signed or something. And she was like, oh, Mr. Mignola, I'm your biggest fan. And like his wife was like, it's Mignola.
Yeah.
Well, if I ever see him, I will pretend that I never said Mignola.
You'll just have to.
If he
you just have
calls
to
me on it,
apologize.
I'll just have to
He's
throw
going to be
myself
like,
in
I've heard your
supplication
podcast.
at his feet.
Yeah.
He's like, you're that Panshin fella.
I love how he draws the demon too,
Oh, yeah.
and I do
Yeah.
love Etrigan.
Well, I love how he imbues so much action into, like, he packs a lot of action into a lot of these panels, which
Oh yeah.
is really great. Yeah, his art is endearing. It's jarring for the first couple pages for me, but then
Well, he has a very particular style.
It's
he
also
really does.
The coloring is pretty dated too, so that kind of
Yeah.
puts it in a very specific era. It's not often anymore you'll see like a whole group of bad guys all be exactly the same color, and you're like, why is everybody orange? Like that just like
Yeah.
puts you back in that era of the 80s really quickly. One thing I wanted to jump back to though is something that Toby had brought up, where the event comicness of this book is something that I actually really appreciate about it, because it's the old school style of event comic where this happened independently of all the other books. Like you didn't get a Batman Cosmic Odyssey tie-in and a Superman Cosmic Odyssey tie-in, and I think that it's something that's really strong about the book is the effects come out of it into those books, but they don't necessarily like need a tie-in to show you that.
And I would totally appreciate that. The fact that this is a self-contained story. You buy this trade, you get the entire story. There's no tie-ins. It's
Yeah.
wham bam done.
Yeah, and I
Beginning
think
and an end.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's an event, and that we in the modern age are kind of event fatigued out. But I think this is an event done right or done better than they do them now.
And I'm
Oh,
totally
absolutely.
willing to admit that. But
Yeah.
the plot horror in me, just like I want there to be this really great arc with all these things happening and character development and like a really intense, tight story. And this is more like, well, we can't really impact the ongoing things that are going on in any of the books, so it kind of has to leave all the characters where it picked them up. even though
Save
later
a
writers
couple.
picked up
Yeah.
elements of this story and added them in.
Right.
But if they had just completely ignored everything that happened in this comic, it wouldn't have mattered really.
Yeah. I think that, save a couple. Most of the characters walk out on the other side of this the same as they walked in, or for the most part. Like Batman's a little bit changed, but you wouldn't notice it in a main book.
And like within the book itself, Jon Stewart has this crisis.
Yeah.
And contemplates suicide.
Right.
And then decides not to do it.
Right.
And if they decide to never address that again, I think that they could have gotten away with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the fact that they brought it up later was great.
I agree.
But
it becomes a big part of the Jon Stewart character.
Right, but they're right. You're right. They could have left it alone, and it would have been like, that's that thing that happened in that one book, and never again. And but I'm glad they brought it up.
Yeah, and the cool thing about it is that when Kyle Rayner is becoming a Green Lantern, John is the only one around. John and Alan Scott. Mm-hmm. And Alan Scott works on a completely different level than the Green Lanterns.
Well, he has a completely different power source.
Yeah. So John is kind of the only one around, and Kyle's like, I don't know how to do this. I'm overwhelmed. And so, John has to be like, try causing the destruction of an entire fucking star system. Yeah. That sucks, let me tell you. But I think it's cool because I think Jon Stewart is an incredibly interesting character to me, and I like the fact that he was the Green Lantern for this book. This book doesn't work with Hal Jordan in there.
Yeah, I'm gonna say something that might sound a little bit contradictory, and I might be the only one that feels this way here, but I know that you said you didn't like that essentially you said you didn't like that there wasn't that much that changed that actually happened for an event comic. Mm-hmm. But I actually kind of like that in the fact that I think that in continuity, if you start changing so much, especially this was really in the beginning, it can get so convoluted later. I think that they did a good job for the most part of having certain things change, but doing it in such a fashion that down the road writers could either take from it or they could not. Yeah. And I mean, that's kind of two sides of the same coin.
No, this is definitely me going, I don't like ice cream. It's not salty like pretzels.
Yeah. I mean, like, I can see both sides.
I don't know
what
kind of ice cream you've been eating, but...
Yeah, but personally, I like that. I like that in the beginning, it almost seems like there was some foresight there where they're able to say, look, we know we're bringing back something. Yeah. And, we have a lot of love. I mean, you can feel, the other thing, too, is you can feel in reading the book that, like, Starlin really loves these characers, or most of them.
Put thought into it,
and he put thought into it. And it does. It's crafted in such a fashion that it can be built upon or left alone by just about anyone who picks up the subject.
I didn't like the death of Forager, especially after teaming up with Batman and so much, and you got the new suit made by Alfred, and then.
So I thought that was powerful. I think that's... I mean, I don't know how I felt about it, but I definitely feel like if you're going to do something like that, that's the way you need to do it.
Yeah, you made me care about a character that no one cared about, and then you got rid of him because he's expendable. I mean, I feel like that's... You couldn't have killed Jon Stewart in this book, and you really couldn't have killed anyone else.
They kind of fridged him.
Yeah.
Really that was about Orion.
Yeah.
No.
And making his character more complex.
Right.
Which I think is good. I think what Matt said is absolutely... It's like when you write a story like this, you're giving a gift to all these friggin' writers that are writing all these books because you're like, hey, you can use this if you want. Right. And if not, who cares?
Right. Well, it's that balancing act of writing ongoing comics is like, at some point, someone's going to press the reset button, and put the story back to the status quo that we're all used to, where Bruce Wayne's still Batman and, Clark Kent's still Superman, and you kind of...
Wait a minute.
You change as much as you can.
Clark Kent is Superman?
Yeah. You change as much as you can, but you can't change too much or all the writers that come after you are fucked. You can't Grant Morrison it and make like a crazy thing that everyone has to just ignore.
But it's been shown before that Grant Morrison can't always Grant Morrison it.
Yeah.
So.
Warren Ellis said it best. When you're writing in somebody else's universe, it's like you're playing in their toy chest. You might take out the toys and play with them for a while, but you got to put them back the way you found them.
Yeah, and that's a really good analogy for what writing in a continuity universe like DC has to be like.
Right, and I don't like that limitation because I love stories that really have a lasting impact, and you can't do that in a serial medium the way that superhero comics operate.
Right.
And I understand that that's a limitation of the medium.
Unless
It's just not to my taste as much as something like Usagi Yojimbo,
Right.
where every single thing that happens counts.
well,
And
or
that's why we have creator-run comics.
I was
exactly.
gonna say, and that's why independent comics are awesome.
And like,
And
what's
that's
great about Invincible, and that's one of the things I mentioned, is like anything could happen. You
Right.
don't know, and those things matter.
And they're different flavors.
Yeah.
And the event book flavor is less to my taste.
Right.
And I acknowledge that
Absolutely.
freely.
No, I think event books are like ethnic restaurants. They're either amazing or you're never going to go there again. That's really,
yeah,
I'm
that's
very...
exactly how I felt about Taco Bell.
Yeah, right?
Never
I
again.
I had a cheat. Well,
Funny I say that, but I always go back.
Yeah, you always go back.
I can't walk away.
Always
I
go
can't
back
walk
for
away.
those chalupas.
I mean, they've got a cantina menu now.
All right, enough about this.
Do we
Yeah.
have anything else to say about Cosmic Odyssey?
Just that, yeah. Read it.
Yeah, I recommended it. I think it's great. I like the sci-fi aspect of the DC universe. I think they've always had really interesting aliens, and I think it's a should read for people who like DC.
Yeah.
it's
It's
fun.
a classic.
And I think it's worth reading to check out Mignola's art because that's such a treat. It's a
Absolutely.
treat
Whatever
for that.
misgivings I may have about it, I would still strongly recommend it.
Yeah, and I think if you like either if you like this or if you liked Infinity Gauntlet, you should read the other one because
Absolutely. Absolutely.
his Marvel cosmic take was definitely in Infinity Gauntlet and Infinity Watch. So.
And as a personal note to Jim Starlin, I'm sorry I criticized you. Please love me.
It's it's funny. I was a big fan of Adam Warlock and the Infinity Gauntlet and the Infinity Watch,
yeah.
and some of the first comics I ever bought were that.
I love
it's
it.
a very special place.
I love how bombastic his writing is.
Yeah.
Also, you all make me feel old because I started reading DC Comics at the death of Superman. So it
Yeah.
was an event that got me into DC Comics. But
Well, I was reading Marvel then, but I wasn't reading DC.
I came into during the B list Justice League. It's like Superman. We've got Booster Gold. We don't need Superman.
Well, at least you skipped Justice League Detroit. Is all I can say.
Oh God.
So I had superhero comics when I was a kid that my mom bought for me. But I think the first comic that I ever bought for myself, I decided that I was going to jump on and buy all 4 Spider-Man books when it switched over to the Scarlet Spider. And I still love the Scarlet Spider.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's fair.
I think you can gauge by our reactions how we feel about it.
I actually like the Scarlet Spider too because when you're a kid and it's the 90s or whatever,
Yeah.
his costume was way more like BA and gnarly and like
Yeah,
When-
I mean, I was
when
I mean,
McFarlane-
I just got out of the gym look.
yeah, when McFarlane is drawing him in his crazy like weird proportion, like a leg is like behind his head. And shit.
I
Impossible.
think I was like 14 when that came
That
out,
was-
which will tell you a lot.
It was
Yeah.
so cool.
Wait a minute, McFarlane wasn't. That was after McFarlane left for Image.
That was
Maybe
like
it was.
96, I
Yeah,
think.
'cause-
Because somebody is going to know that I'm wrong and be screaming at their
McFarlane
computer.
did Torment, which I know, in Spider-Man terms, I know as the storyline that's not Kraven's Last Hunt.
Isn't that everything?
But it is, but especially Torment. I give it a bad rap. It's interesting, but
Yeah.
it's not Kraven's.
Well, I know he was drawing covers around the 300 numbering because that's about when Venom showed up, and he
I
had.
think he showed up in like at the end of 299.
Yeah. So and if McFarlane was around when Venom was appearing, so
Yeah, and
That's-
that
yeah,
was
I
like,
get-
I want to say 91.
yeah,
Ish.
yeah. It was right after Secret Wars, or like shortly after
Well,
Secret Wars, right?
Well, it was a bit.
Secret Wars was 85, and that's when Spider-Man got the black costume.
Yeah.
And he had that for a little while before he ditched it, and then
Right.
there was a while before Venom showed up.
Showed up.
Okay.
So maybe it was like 89.
And then they made Venom a hero, and he became boring and stupid, and then he died.
Well, he
Thanks for
was
that.
awesome
Mark.
when Rick Remender was writing him in the last like 2 or 3 years.
No. I mean, Venom didn't die. Eddie Brock died. Spoiler.
I'm
Who
pretty
cares?
sure Eddie Brock is still alive. He's anti-Venom now.
What the?
Didn't you read Spider Island?
Yeah,
No,
come
I'm
on,
going
Joe.
to-
Joe?
Get
You
with this
saying
shit.
that makes me want to break this bottle and ground the shards into my eyes.
I didn't read it either.
I don't think anyone would stop you from.
I
doing
want to
that.
read. I actually heard from a friend of ours. I heard from Brant that Spider Island was pretty good, and I was going to read it, but now I don't want to ever
I
read
only
anything.
caught part of it.
Yeah.
The Venom part, actually. which is why I hate event books, because I was perfectly happy with what Venom was doing without it getting into the whole Spider Island bullshit.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we've exhausted.
I
Cosmic
think
Odyssey.
so too. I think I'm exhausted.
All right. So we should move to the recommendations then. Joe, do you want to start?
Yeah.
Joe, you're grinning.
I just had the weirdest sense of deja vu. I brought Elephantmen because I said I would.
Yeah.
And I have this lovely little drawing that nobody can see that's listening to us.
It's a zebra.
It is. It's Richard Starkings did that because he's
cool.
kind of awesome.
He is awesome.
Elephantmen is I really like it. It's very that's right up my alley. It's kind of this. It's a story about these genetically engineered beastmen, for lack of a better term.
Is this a book about furries?
No, they've
Sort of.
actually taken these. Yeah, they're really like, the main character really is an elephant man. He's an elephant that walks on his hind legs like a man.
Mm-hmm.
He's like 10 feet tall, and his name is Ebony.
Mm-hmm.
And they were made by this corporation. It's actually the continuation of a book called Hip Flask.
Yeah. War Toys being the first volume of that, I think.
I think War Toys comes after
Okay.
Hip Flask.
War Toys is a good description of what they are because they're
Yeah.
engineered as basically living weapons.
Yeah, exactly. And now they've been kind of sent back out into society, and they really are, they're discriminated against. People don't want to be around them. It's very similar, kind of like the Rambo thing. He comes back and nobody wants to talk to him. He's kind of weird because he's been in Vietnam. Well, these are giant fucking animal creatures that were bred for war and now have been released to the general population.
They don't know what to do with themselves.
And so they kind of don't know what to. Yeah, they don't know what to do with themselves. And one of them is a hippo that's named Hip Flask, and then there's Ebony the elephant, and there's kind of make relationships out in the real world, and things progress, things happen. But it's got the main art is great. I really like the art in it, but it's got a revolving panel of artists, which really helps kind of keep it from getting stale. It's really nice to kind of experience different stories in a different art style because they're all, it affects the way that you read them. And I really enjoy all of it. And I brought the first trade, which is actually the first hardback, which is kind of like probably the first 5 or 6 issues.
It looks pretty thick.
I think it's
there's
the
first-
like 10 or 12.
It might,
trades, I
it
think.
might be. Well, it's really thick paper, and there's
there's
some
little
extra stuff in
backups
here.
and things.
It looks like a $40 book.
Yeah, no, there's actually a special edition in here. There's a special hardback they released that was like a fairy tale, and it's Captain Stoneheart and Captain Stoneheart and the Truth Fairy.
Yeah.
And it's penciled by Chris Boccolo, and it's written by Starkings, I'm pretty sure. No, it's Joe Kelly.
Oh, that's cool.
So there you go. That's between Joe Kelly writing the last little bit in here and Robert Kirkman saying, and I quote, "totally kick ass." I think that's high praise indeed.
Well, if Robert Kirkman likes it, then that has to be good.
There you go. I mean, the creator of Invincible and that other book about the zombies and the people. I don't know what it's called.
Battle Pope.
Battle Pope.
Definitely.
That's what it is. Brit.
Oh, I thought it was Tech Jacket. I'm sorry.
Oh, that Wolfman.
Science
Something.
Dog. I
don't
don't even know.
Anyway.
So
Yeah.
Bananas.
Elephant Man, Wounded Animals.
Wounded animals.
Also of note, the trades and all of the treatment for all the hardcovers and stuff in the series are excellent. Starkings is a British creator, comes from the UK, and so brings that very European feel to all the
Absolutely.
trades and this
Absolutely.
series in general. It comes out when it's ready. It doesn't rush through the books. It's not changing artists because people couldn't keep up. It's changing artists because they needed a different tone for each story.
Exactly. And it flows very well, I think.
Yeah.
And while the main story, not every book is about the main story. So you do get stories about these individual characters. And it is very, very, I think it's very, very cool. Because you get insight into each of these characters. So
Yeah.
it's good stuff.
Toby, what
Cool.
did you bring?
I brought Richard Wagner's The Ring of the Nibelung, adapted and drawn by P. Craig Russell, volumes 1 and 2, which is the entire Ring Saga opera in graphic novel form.
That's cool.
Isn't that where they test Porsches? I'm sorry.
No. If you don't know anything about Ring of the Nibelung, it was an
Nuremberg.
opera written in the 19th century. It's been hugely influential. It had a huge influence on the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
You can see the elements of that story throughout this. There's an evil dwarf creature. There's a magic ring. There's a dude who looks like Gandalf. The art in this adaptation is incredible. I absolutely love it. It's a really good version of the story, especially if you don't feel like sitting through a 12-hour opera.
Mhm.
Who doesn't though?
They almost never perform
They don't
all of it. Like
no,
that never
they'll do
happens.
it they'll do like one part of it,
Yeah.
and then they'll do the next part like a week later.
Yeah.
This was put out by Dark Horse about 10 years ago. And yeah, it's really interesting to read because you can see all of the influence it's had on later things, not just the Lord of the Rings, but stuff like the original Star Wars trilogy. So yeah, I mean, I don't really have a whole lot to say about it other than that it's great, and if you don't know the story of the Ring of the Nibelung, you desperately need to read it.
Yeah, I didn't know they did a comic adaptation of that, so it's really cool.
Yeah, it's really not very well known.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wagner is really interesting, so I'm kind of interested in reading that. It sounds really, really good.
Well, I've seen this on your bookshelf and been interested before. So
Yeah, it's kind of pretty far out there compared to a lot of the things we read because I mean it's not superhero, it's
Right.
not modern in any
Right.
real stretch of the imagination. It's pretty far afield from what we even consider to be modern fantasy. But there's a lot of really interesting beats that you see repeated throughout modern literature, especially like fantastic literature,
That's cool.
science fiction and fantasy, and superheroes.
Nice. All right, sounds good.
Sounds good.
Cade, what you
Okay, for this week, I was gonna bring Kingdom Come, but since we just did a DC event book, I instead brought Marvel's, painted by the same guy, Alex Ross, written by Kurt Busiek. Came out in 1994, and it is the story of a photographer who sees superheroes as a normal person would see superheroes. Many great characters throughout the last 50, 60 years. Well, Marvel characters, of course, Human Torch, etc.
Namor.
Yeah.
The Invaders, Namor. Namor was in the Invaders?
Yeah, he was in the Invaders. No, he was in the Defenders too, but he was in the Invaders back in World War II with Captain America, Spitfire, Union Jack, the original Human Torch.
And that stuff is in here. This book's kind of cool because it's sort of a history of the Marvel Universe.
And, like Gwen Stacy, the wedding of Mr. Fantastic and Invisible Woman. Gosh, amazing art. That's my favorite part, Alex.
Actually,
My favorite Alex Ross art.
this is a complete tangent, but in Secret Avengers, also written by Rick Remender, there was a recent moment where Captain America introduces Flash Thompson as Venom to the Human Torch, and he's like, "Oh, what did you do?" And he's like, "He's the man who killed Hitler." And there's just this really great moment of like, "Oh yeah, this is like an alternate fucking reality." Like, Hitler didn't shoot himself in the head and get set on fire. Like, a superhero killed him.
Yeah.
Right.
And here's the dude, and he's still alive in the 21st century. And that's kind of weird.
Wait,
Yeah.
Flash Thompson isn't Flash Thompson?
Flash Thompson is Venom now.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, so he's introducing him to the original Human
Yeah,
Torch.
Captain America is
Okay, that's
introducing
what I got.
Flash Thompson to the
Original Human Torch. That's where I got
Flash
confused.
Thompson.
I was like, Johnny Storm didn't kill Hitler.
Yeah.
What are we
Flash
talking
Thompson
about?
and Venom and Captain America are having tea, and they introduce each
Well,
other.
that's
to
what
one
you do
another.
with Venom
Yeah.
as Flash Thompson.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm sorry for interrupting you, Cade.
No, not at all. I was just about done. I was just wanted to comment that beautifully painted by Alex Ross. amazing artwork.
Yeah, Alex Ross's style kind of varies in how much it actually looks like a painting, and I'm looking over your shoulder, and this really does look like full like oil paintings almost.
It's very Rockwell-esque, and it has that kind of like American still life kind of painting style, and it's much more classic American tradition than his stuff in like Kingdom Come, which is much more epic story based.
Well, and the funny thing about this is I love Kingdom Come, and I love the story. I think the story in Kingdom Come is better. Not that you can really compare the two.
Right.
I like Kingdom Come more. I love Marvel still, and I love his art. I think Marvel's wins in the art. I think it's an amazing idea. I think it was a brilliant idea, and I don't think anybody could have done it as well as Kurt Busiek.
It's something that's been on my list to read for a very long time.
Yeah. Some of Busiek's stronger writing, I think, is in
absolutely
this book, for sure.
It's the birth of the Marvel Universe through the modern, like the Silver Age Marvel Universe, through the eyes of a regular person.
Yeah.
And so you're not experiencing this from the point of view of the heroes. You're experiencing it from the point of view of the guy that's running from the rubble.
Yeah.
And that's something that Kurt Busiek does incredibly well, and he goes on to do in Astro City really well.
Yeah, like how would you react if Galactus showed up in your city? You know, like that kind of stuff is really interesting.
Yeah. So
there's an X-Men story in here as well that I really liked too. So. Yeah. Or at least a moment
and the Avengers.
Yeah.
There's so many great moments in there.
Yeah, it's a be all tell all Marvel Universe book. It's really fun.
Yeah, totally.
What do you got, Matt?
Well, we've been doing when I was reading Cosmic Odyssey, it kind of reminded me one of the things that one of the reasons that I love Batman is the Batman that doesn't just punch everything and stuff, as we talked about before. And we've talked a lot about the New 52 throughout our last 10 podcasts. So I decided to go with the New 52 Batman, the first trade. It's called The Court of the Owls.
Right.
Read by Scott Snyder. Art by Greg Capullo.
Yeah.
Capullo. And what I love about this story is that it isn't someone you can just punch. It's not It's not a bad guy. It's basically a secret society. And what's great about it is Scott Snyder's able to kind of weave this tapestry that feels very organic. That it's been there for years. He's able to go back and you basically have a completely new set of villains, if you want to call them that. That you've never heard of before, that you don't know about, that's something new. It feels fresh, it feels new, it feels different. And I really think personally that it was kind of one of the gems to come out of the New 52.
Yeah.
So I just thought it would be kind of cool, being that we did an older DC book, and I'd recommend something that was on the newer end.
Yeah, and I've recommended this before on the show, not bringing the trade to recommend, but I've mentioned that it's excellent, and it is. And one of the things I really like about it too is that he's able to, like Matt was saying, weave this kind of tapestry and add some history to Gotham in a way that doesn't feel tacked on. It feels like it's been there forever. So like you're just being exposed to it now.
It definitely feels very organic.
But it feels like it's always been there, and that's really smart. And the art is fucking phenomenal.
It is amazing. It's
so good.
It's some of the best Batman art I think
Yeah.
I've seen in 5 years.
I thought I had read all of the best Batman stories, but when this came out, I was definitely like, yeah, this is going in my list of like must-read Batman stories. So I really enjoy it too.
High praise indeed.
Yeah, I really like it. I thought it was good. All right, I'm last. I brought a spin-off book of a book that I don't think anyone's read, and that's fine because this is actually better, I think, than the main series. I love the main series. The main series was called Top 10, and it was written by Alan Moore.
I've read Top 10.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. And drawn by Gene Ha. And nobody talks about Top 10, and I feel like it gets forgotten a lot when we talk about Alan Moore.
One of the few really good Alan Moore things.
It's one of my favorite Alan Moore things. Well, this is a character from Top 10 called Smax. He's the big blue giant guy with the white handprint on his chest. And this is a spin-off series. After Top 10 ended, they did like 4 or 5 miniseries, all written by different people. This was the only one that was written by Alan Moore. It's drawn by Xander Cannon, And it's the story of Smax the giant going back to his homeland, which is a fairy tale fantasy world, and him absolutely hating it. He leaves this huge metropolitan city, this hub for all these interconnected worlds. He has to go back to this very quaint, very campy fantasy world where he's forced to go on quests and slay dragons and save maidens, and he just is a grump and hates it the whole time. And it's great because it really pokes fun at the whole fantasy genre as a whole, but in a loving way. And it's Alan Moore being really funny, which is something that we never talk about Alan Moore doing. That the book is actually clever, and there's a lot of chuckling moments in it, but there's also a lot of heartfelt moments in the book. There's a lot of sadness in there. You find out why Smax left his homeworld to go join the police force in Top 10, and you get to meet his family for the first time, and he was raised by dwarves or gnomes, very little creatures, which is, he's a very
So pretty much
man.
he's Carrot Iron Founders, and
Again,
nobody got that
no.
reference. It's a Discworld reference. You're all a bunch of
We didn't read Terry
awful people, Philistines.
Terry Pratchett has always left me cold.
You have the right to be wrong. It's okay.
I do have the right to be wrong, and I choose to exercise it frequently.
It's okay. I do too, actually.
Well, yeah, I haven't read much Pratchett, but I really enjoy this story a lot. And his partner, Robin, who is like a tech person, makes toys and all these gadgets, and none of her gadgets work in this fantasy world because no technology can exist there. So it also has kind of a fish out of water story for her as well, and she gets to go on this great quest with Smax to try to go slay a very evil, very malicious dragon. And some really good character moments come out of this book. And so if all you know of Alan Moore is Watchmen, I definitely recommend this and also Top 10. But definitely Smax. It's very funny and I like it a lot. And the art's really good. Xander Cannon nails it on this. It feels great.
All right.
So, what would you like to read, Joe?
Against my better judgment, I'm going to choose... I really want to read Marvels.
You've already read it. Be brave, Joe. Be brave.
I can see where you're looking. And since I've been putting everything up on the website, we have been reading a lot of DC stuff, and especially a lot of Batman stuff.
That's true. That's true. I think I'm going to vote for Marvels, even though I've read it before. It's been years since I have read it, and I think there's just going to be a lot of good stuff there to talk about. And,
yeah.
It's one of the books I bought when I was 16 and just getting into comic books, and it really had a powerful effect on me. And it was kind of my introduction to the birth of the Silver Age Marvel Universe, and the Marvel Universe in general. And I have a very special place in my heart for it, so I think I have to vote for Marvels. I do want to read The Court of Owls, and I do want to read Smax.
You should read both of them.
So,
just like
everyone should read everything we recommend.
Just like every week.
We know better than you.
Yeah.
I don't want to read your book.
I do. I really want to read Toby's book.
Toby knows I love it.
Toby, what do you want to read?
This is almost against my better judgment too, because Alex Ross is very hit or miss for me. But I'm also going to vote for Marvels because I feel like it's a piece of the Marvel universe that I've been missing for a long time, and I feel like I need to read it to really be educated about the Marvel universe.
Yeah, I think that it's a pretty good intro to Marvel, and even if you are a longtime Marvel fan, it's a great
refresher.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's powerful too. I really do.
Yeah.
How about you, Cade? What do you vote for?
I'm gonna vote for the Ring of the Nibelung because that sounds cool as hell.
It does sound really good.
So I'm in the best position right now because when I vote for Marvels, I can make it so whatever Chard says doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So I feel very powerful right now. I'm going to go for Marvels as well, just because I haven't read it yet. It's on my to-read list. Although I do have to agree with Tobiah that Alex Ross is really hit or miss for me. Yeah. Sometimes I feel like his stuff is too... I don't know what the right word is, but everything's so classic and epic that I just want to it would make a great print on my wall,
right?
But there's not a lot of movement.
It's too static sometimes.
Exactly.
For me.
Yeah.
My problem is that he draws people too much like real people.
Yeah.
It is a little too jarring sometimes. Because when I read a comic book, I want to read a comic book.
Right. And in Kingdom Come, that feels forced. In this, because of the story, I think it works.
And as I was looking at it, sitting next to Cade here, as he was flipping through it, I could see that it wasn't quite that, which excites me because that's one of the reasons that I've yet to really crack into it. I'm gonna go for Marvels.
I think
I haven't read it yet.
Yeah, his art style changed a lot between Kingdom Come and this book too, because I think he took a little bit of time off in between those books.
Well, yeah, he did Marvels, and Kingdom Come didn't come out for I think at least a year, and I want to say 2 or 3.
Yeah.
This was in '94.
Kingdom Come was in.
It couldn't have been before '98.
No,
Yeah, I was gonna say 98, but
I mean, it was a while afterwards.
Yeah, I don't
And
know.
they're both brilliant, but they both do completely different things.
Yeah.
So, I agree, man. I think I love my favorite thing that Alex Ross has ever done is the character designs for Earth X, which we still need to do the second part of.
Oh yeah,
Well,
But,
we'll make it a
bonus
bonus
episode.
episode.
Yeah,
for
no,
sure.
totally.
We've,
But,
we've threatened to do that before.
Speaking of bonus episodes, brief announcement.
Yeah.
We're recording this in January, but if I've done my math correctly, it should be dropping on February 21st. So next week, or next weekend, March 1st through the 3rd, we are going to be at Emerald City Comic Con.
Right.
Yep.
So if you're going to be there, look for us. And we're going to try and record something there.
Yeah.
Maybe a bonus episode. Not exactly sure, but something will come out of that. So
There will be some content for you.
look
I will
forward
be-
to that.
I will be the guy trying to get Jeff Johns to fight me if he's there, and if not,
Yeah,
I'm sure
I'll be-
somebody will be there.
I'll be carrying the tub of grease that Jeff and Joe will smear on themselves
I
before
might
they fight.
also be singing to Derek Robertson because he's amazing, and I really.
And
I
I'll
think he's
be
great.
wandering around getting sketches of Batman with a beard, like I normally do.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
all right,
Read
We'll be
Marvels,
there.
and
Yep.
we'll see you guys later.
all right,
Dose weeks.
all right. See you guys. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.